Hey there, Shopomaniacs. You're listening to another episode of the Shop Talk Show. This week, Token Therapy with me, Dave Rupert, and Chris Coyier. Hey, Chris, who we got in the studio?
Chris won't fix Coyier. That's
That's the new tagline, yeah.
my new tag in the middle. Yeah. In a different background color. That's the official design look of a tag. Yeah. Maybe a border. We have the Frosts here today. Mr. Brad Frost, how you doing, Brad?
Hey, great. Thanks for having us.
Brad's better looking brother as he introduces himself publicly on stage. Ian Frost, how you doing, Ian?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you both in Amsterdam recently. We were both hanging out on the canals and doing life in Amsterdam. Very beautiful place. And I caught you at the end of a big trip. You had, I think you said you were been working together side by side, brothers in arms for 10 years, and took the opportunity to celebrate by hitting Europe.
Yeah. It's like part mini speaking tour. I sort of started off at UX LX in Lisbon, Portugal, and
What's
he
LX?
met me there, and LX.
What does
Lisbon.
LX mean?
That's Lisbon. It's
That's Lisbon
cool.
experience.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ian met me there, and we hiked up the coast of Portugal, which is awesome, and then continued hiking adventures in Switzerland and saw some pretty epic mountains, and then on to the flatlands of the Netherlands to meet up with you.
Yeah, right. They literally are flat. There's so many bikes there. It's absolutely unbelievable. And it's like a bike culture without being a bike nerd culture. Like I'm sure there's plenty of bike nerds, but people are like, we'll ride any old rusty piece of crap. Because I don't think you need a lot of like bike horsepower when the steepest hill is like up over a little canal quick and then back down,
It's accurate.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So it's pretty amazing to see what it looks like when it's just, this is normal. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. You're just literally trying to get from point A to point B. And
You probably want it not fancy because, the fancier it is, the higher chance of getting ripped off. I don't know what crime is like there. Maybe it's not a problem, but yeah, still a nice one.
I sometimes take umbrage because when I see a lot of videos about city planning and how, the Netherlands, it's bikeable. Oh, Texas, that sucks. It can't walk it. It's also like 1,000 degrees here. Hills, not fun to bike on. I
not
feel like
least of which it's gigantic. So we found
enormous.
a website. I'll find it and share it with you. During our travels, we superimpose. There's a website where you're able to compare the size, and it literally superimposes like an SVG of a state or a country over top of another one. And so we were like,
but is it always Texas though? It's
no.
how they only compare things to bananas on Reddit.
I want to compare the Netherlands to Pennsylvania. Like you can do that.
I see.
And that's what we were doing. And Netherlands is 2.8 times smaller than the state of Pennsylvania. So when you're talking about that bikeability, city planning, and not least of which, like, these cities were created well before the automobile and stuff like
when
that.
people were walking. Like that was the
And
mode
that
du jour, right?
Literal horsepower was as fast as you can go. So anyway, so there's a reason why these things exist and why it can't just like translate. But whenever we would show people that, where it's like, our state is almost 3 times larger than your entire country.
Wow. I did not realize that.
And that impacts how things are done or not done.
Yeah. Well, I'm not to turn this into the city planning show, but it is. I get into this like, I would love a biking city. I'd love to walk. I don't like my car, but it is where I'm at currently. So maybe I change it. Maybe that's on me. Maybe I change it. Change my life up.
Maybe. Don't take on too much burden at once. So is
leaving my house, burden number 1. Difficult.
I know. There's always a penalty to leaving the house. You gotta wait it out. It was celebratory in that 10 years working together, but those 10 years working together was largely client work, or I don't know how you describe it, but you know, there's a hell of a lot of logos on some of the stuff you work with. You've had the good fortune of not only just doing client work, but doing client work at the you know, the Fortune 500 level, let's call it. And so that's cool. And you're like, maybe it's time for a change. I don't know, want to put words in your mouth, but you've released a course. So let's make sure we hit that at the top of the show. And it's not hard to find if you just look up, I don't know, what's the absolute easiest way to find it? Go to bradfrost.com. Oh, nice. You didn't get fancy with the title. God, I wish there was a design tokens course, says a random person, and they type design tokens course into whatever. I'd say Google, but it's probably more like Anthropic or whatever these days. Hopefully it can find it. And then you'll get right there. So it's a design tokens course. It's an entire course on design tokens. Makes sense from a branding perspective from the Frost universe, as you're already known for atomic design, and it does not shy away from that connection, right? It's kind of a natural extension to those ideas that you're already known for. So good idea there. And you can buy the course, or your whole team can buy the course, or two of you can buy a course, or whatever. Just one copy of the course, $900. But of course, you're saving money right here, only here. They said this is exclusive. They didn't say that. It's probably not exclusive. But the coupon code is Shop Talk Show is awesome. We'll get you. What'll it get you, Ian?
It'll get you 20% off of the course.
Not bad. That's a good number. That's enough to make my little ears perk up when somebody says 20%, you know? It's a good number. A fifth. Okay, so that's the idea. And you finished it right before the trip. So that was probably pretty satisfying, right? If you hate to have to go on this long trip and come back and be like, all right, where were we again?
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of things, I think, playing into it, but it felt really good to empty our heads after basically working on this exact problem for effectively 10 years, or longer. I mean, as we've been doing websites, kind of the separation of concerns between HTML and CSS and CSS Zen Garden and all of that stuff. We've been kind of doing it.
Right,
really
you would do this. You'd roll in with a design system, and the design system would be based on design tokens. Is that fair to say, or something like? And you'd just bring that to party, like this is what we're doing because you need it.
Yeah, Ian, I think it was the very first project, right, that you worked on whenever you joined. We were working with, at the time, is about.com, and we were helping explode about.com into this suite of digital products, right? It's similar to like a Vox, right? It's like Vox has, The Verge and Vox.com and like
It's kind of a perfect example because they are related and should probably feel related and linked to each other and all that stuff, and sort of like be unique also.
Yeah, but
it's both.
Like the engine, right? Like these are publications that all need to do an editorial workflow, right? So the actual sort of CMS and all of that machinery is shared, but the aesthetic outcome, like before it was like about.com/cars, about.com/pregnancy, about.com/diabetes. It's like these are wildly different topics that necessitate a different look and feel. And so basically taking this ancient property and kind of modernizing it in the form of, let's create a health website that looks and feels like a health website, and then over here is the car website, or over here the money website, and those things necessarily need to look different, but at the same time we want to be sharing all the things that
like what would be the problem if you didn't do that? Like if you're just like, I don't know, this one needs to be different, so we're just gonna roll a different website. I don't know, we're not going to share anything. Like, what would the problem with that be? I mean, I guess it's a little bit obvious, but
well, we work with Condé Nast, another big publisher, who that was their starting point, is they have 24-ish different properties. So Vanity Fair, Vogue, Wired, GQ, New Yorker, and they had 24 different websites with 24 different CMSs, and like
really, even the CMS was different and different repos.
Yeah, it was just a mess. So, whenever we worked and helped them out, it was, they were already under that process of going, oh, well, all of these websites ostensibly do the same thing, and we need to have shared systems and CMSs and be able to cross-pollinate between our organization. And
They're
yeah,
such
we don't wanna
extreme
have-
examples. They're not like, yeah, it would be nice if we could, kind of squish these three things together. You roll into like, this is a nightmare. We need to deal with this. And like, it's not even optional. We have to do this. Otherwise we're going to go nuts or nothing will change. Right. Or like whatever goals you have, just crumple them up and throw them away because it's not happening.
Yeah. I think that what we've seen over the last, again, 10 years or beyond is this notion of more. It's just more stuff. We need to ship more features. We need to ship new experiences. We need to ship the rebrand. We need to support multiple platforms. We need to support white labeling. We need to support these different campaigns. We need to support multiple product families like our marketing website and our capital E enterprise apps. It's just more. And it's like fast, go. How do we do all of that and not totally die in the process?
Well, I think that's what I'm learning, is that context shift from product to product. Oftentimes you'll have the same team or the same like offshore organization, like switching between products, right? Like product A to product B, literally the same product, but they have been blessed with organizational autonomy for so many years that they're completely different, completely different tech stacks, completely different component systems and stuff like that. So autonomy is a hell of a drug. It allows people to really express themselves. But tokens is this one area where it's like, we can all be different, but if we make this part the same, it's a little bit of glue that makes us not like want to just throw everything away every year, pretty much. Is that kind of what you saw in your historical enterprise work?
Yeah. It's so we use the metaphor of a door, right? It's like, here's this door. We want it to open and close. Hopefully pretty uncontroversial there. And you go to the hardware store and you go to the door aisle, and wouldn't you know it, you see a bunch of doors for sale that all open and close, and they have dimensions that are standard dimensions. There are different materials, one semi-hollow primed door, another solid oak door, and these things provide you the structure and functionality that a door provides. But let's say you go to the door aisle and you're like, well, I need my door to be turquoise, and the next person is looking for an orange door, and it's like, oh, well, you're not going to find that in the door aisle because that's a separate concern. And that's what we've been doing digitally, has been like, I need a turquoise button and I need an orange button, and so therefore I can't use the design system, so I'm going to throw the entire door frame in the trash can and build the door frame myself from scratch because I need an orange door. and like that is what we've seen play out time and again. And it's because these systems have been coupled together, going all the way back to like Bootstrap and early days of material design and the rest of them. It's like, oh, here are these things, but they ship with these kind of default styles, and then we hack the crap out of them in order to bend them into submission. So by sort of splitting them out, Dave, to your point, is like we're able to sort of be like, let's agree on this kind of architecture. It's not agreeing on the aesthetic outcome, but it's establishing this thoughtful way of introducing and supporting different aesthetic outcomes that unlocks all of the flexibility and autonomy an organization can need in that department without having to abandon all of the benefits that the shared systems provide.
So it's like a perfect outcome. You build this system, everybody agrees on the bricks or whatever your metaphor is there, the doors. And then, but like without using a metaphor, you have this whole suite of design tokens that one of the design tokens perhaps is a color, or maybe it's broken down into button color or something. And that there's kind of like a whole bunch of them. At least that's what I'm picturing. And that if I apply a whole bunch of them to website A, which is the healthcare one, it looks healthcare-y. And without changing anything else, or maybe not much else, I ship a different set of design tokens to the car website, and it looks car-y all of a sudden. And that's maybe all that I changed was just the design tokens, and I get 2 different websites. Maybe, yeah?
That's right. Yep.
That's nice, right?
Who do you
Isn't
think
that sound appealing?
Yeah.
I'm just
who do you
changing
think does
some...
this well? Like who's like doing this well right now?
The Nord Health team actually just launched some new updates to that. Nord Health design system is one of my favorite design systems in general, so I was very excited to see that they always, I think, supported kind of a couple different brands, but they just kind of overhauled and shipped some stuff. And so I feel like that's a high water and recent mark. But also, frankly, like the advancement of material design with like M3, I think like they've done a lot to, unlock a lot more theming capabilities and stuff in those things. But there's also just been the development. So MUI, for instance, which is like, the React implementation of material design, they kind of spun out base UI, and it's like in React Aria from like the Adobe team. So like there's been like, I think like a movement towards these kind of more like headless UI. It's like we're just going to ship the door frames, and then you kind of bring your own, open props.
Well, that's cool. So these are examples of design systems that don't lean into the design part so much. Yeah. The BYO design. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So it's like there's these 2 complementary systems that work in tandem, right? There's a component system and then a design token system. And what we're doing is we're splitting out the components, the structure of the door frame, which that structure now includes. Like historically, the separation of concerns was the 3 languages of the web, right? HTML for structure, CSS for style, JavaScript for behavior. And the lines are a hell of a lot blurrier now because all of these languages have advanced so much, right? But we're also talking about things like, well, the hinges need to be on the right or the left. And those are styling decisions, but they impact the functionality and the structure of the door, right? And so that's what we're talking about when you're talking about laying out, an icon next to the button text or an accordion, little down caret and stuff. Like the positioning of that stuff, you would call kind of more structural styles. Right. But then like the font family and the actual colors of those things can be wildly different. Right. So it's this kind of new separation of concerns where the component styles are these vanilla or like headless or just kind of neutral, non-branded things. And then the design token system is the thing that's bringing the healthcare or the car, sort of aesthetic to the party.
And then it sounds like you're even splitting up the tokens into like structural, like corner radii and widths or what, and decorative, like fonts, colors. Do you kind of draw that distinction or no?
We kind of bundle everything together. You can split them out if you really want to get granular with it. If you want teams who only need color, you can kind of install that token system, but we tend to normally kind of bundle it all together because sometimes a lot of these things kind of need to work together in order to get the proper aesthetic for your team.
Yeah.
So it's that bundling of all of these different token categories hanging together that we call a theme, right? And so when you talk about a light theme or a dark theme or the healthcare theme or the car theme, those are all kind of
like, what is the structure then? What does bundling together mean? Is like bundle bot per component? Is that no?
Yeah. So basically, what we talk about in the course, and this is why I think we bit down on this as our first course, as we sort of made this transition, because we work with team after team and industry after industry, whether it's a publisher over here, or we work with like Pfizer, which has over like 3,000 or 300 consumer facing brands that all need their own things. We worked with Caterpillar that does more, marketing things as well as like e-commerce sites to buy like a bulldozer blade if you need a bulldozer blade. Like,
Yeah.
so there's like all of these different industries, and basically what we've been doing is just been iterating over this architecture that is effectively this 3-tiered architecture where you kind of have tier
Right.
one.
This is the good stuff too. I guess this is why you're buying the course, is because if I just took a swing at it, my swing's probably going to be wrong or less informed by the couple of guys who have done this about 50 times or whatever.
That's really it.
And as somebody who's like 11 months into it, does like Token's project, take Brad's course first. I think it's a really good choice. I will just throw that out there. I think having I love a good line in the sand. Like, are you on this side of the line or that side of the line? Is Brad dumb, or like? I think like having a line really sort of allows your team to react and say, didn't like that part, like that part.
Yes.
So that's where I think this course is super valuable.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. But and that's really the intention.
And now, spoil it. Tell us how to do it.
Well, no, but that's the beauty, is it's like, here's like the general shape of this stuff, and then the exact language and whatever you're using, it needs to be modified in order to meet your organization's needs. But there are these truths that we've arrived at with each and every team that we work on, that it's like there's, as much as we like working with 5 people at a time to arrive at the exact same place, we're like, okay, like we now feel sturdy with this. So 3 tiers, right? The first tier just lays out all the ingredients. Like, picture it. Here's all the stuff you can.
Bootsy wants out, man.
Bootsy is.
You want me to?
Yeah, you grab him.
Bootsy does his own thing.
In the same place. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, me and Ian are. We didn't do our normal magic trick. We still can.
Whoa!
So it's always great. We just that's our magic trick.
Okay, so back to the 3 separations.
Yeah, 3 tiers. These are the ingredients in your pantry. This is everything you have to work with, right? Obviously, for your dinner tonight, you're not going to use every ingredient in the pantry, right? And half of that stuff's probably going to expire and never be used or whatever. But you get the metaphor, right? This tier only describes what you have to work with. Here's Starbucks green. Starbucks green is this hex value, or this is green 500 or red 700 or whatever like language you want to use. And this language is really designed to be used by the people in the restaurant who are using these ingredients, right? So this is not shipping or this is not meant to be used by consumers. This is just like, here's what we have to work with. Now, the exercise becomes this kind of mix and match, draw the line. I say it's like Highlights magazine, where you're like, where does the fox live? And you draw the line from the fox to the burrow, and where does the fish live? Here's the fish in the pond, and stuff like that. But that's what we're doing at the second tier, is we're basically giving those ingredients in tier 1 jobs to do in a user interface. So if we say color, background, brand, we can now say, okay, I want that to map to Starbucks green, right? And then that's going to render.
Oh, so you do tiered systems like that. Like, you'll set a color, but that is never to be touched or consumed, because a better named, more appropriate name points to that brand color thing. Oh, that's interesting. Yep. And so they're intentionally private variables. Oh, that's fascinating.
Precisely. Yeah, because otherwise you're going to get a bunch of people that are like, oh, I like yellow 300
it's protective
on my like yellow 100 background, and wouldn't you know it, that's
because I've used this metaphor before, even though I don't know that I've earned the right to use such lofty metaphors, but like,
join us.
Or I've compared, well, I've compared it to Tailwind. You know how Tailwind has classes, and that you kind of define what those classes are, and then that's all you have to use. Like, they're intentionally And I've always kind of thought that that's perhaps a reason why some teams reach for it. And then the metaphor I used was like bumper bowling, is because like it's hard to screw up because there's only a couple values to pick, and those values tend to look good together or work well together. So the chances of you producing a good design with it, even when faced with just a ball in a lane, you're probably going to hit a couple of pins down there, or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's you're basically providing this structure so that it makes it very difficult for people using the system to screw things up. So it's like
Tailwind people love that to call it bumper bowling for building websites. They love that to say that about them.
Yeah, you should put it on the website. You should see how they like it. I just want to do a small tangent. How many colors? Because I feel like the trend is 7,000 colors in a color ramp across like 22 different colors, maybe 360 colors across a hue wheel, and then like 100 different types of saturation and 100 different types of lightness.
I like the question. That's like how wide do you let it together?
How much is enough? How many grays do I need on my website?
Yeah. This is I think kind of like the beauty of this thing is like that tier 1 layer was like you could
doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
Because you're saying that never ships to the client. That never gets like tokenized to the client. It lives in Figma
not never, but there needs to be a really damn good reason to do that.
Right.
We in the course we're like, do not do this unless you like have very, very, very good reasons to do that. Because otherwise it really is. It's the equivalent of just like letting the restaurant patrons kick open the double doors back into the kitchen and just grab an industrial sized jar of cornstarch and then take it back out to their table. You're like, what are you going to do with that thing? Like,
I do like that metaphor, right? Of like a customer coming back to sprinkle a little flour on their chocolate cake or whatever. You're like, I don't think you're doing it right, actually.
I think what I hate, this is me, petty Dave here, maximum pettiness Dave, is color yellow 100, 200, 300, 400, 500.
Very common, I'll say.
Very common. I think you go against t-shirt sizes in your course, right? Small, medium, large, extra large, because somebody, not throwing any systems under the bus, but maybe the one I work on, introduces S nudge, and M nudge. Just get a little half step, right? Not the best for me, but then somebody's even on the hundreds scale, somebody says, 545 yellow, and it has some meaning, like some tied to some value, but I detest that, really. Like at my core, I'm like, we didn't need 545. You just made up a color because you couldn't choose one. But
it does throw the whole value of the system away, right? If we're all just doing whatever we want, there's no value to extract anymore.
There's 1,000 possible yellows now. That's what gets me. Is like, okay, we have 1,000 yellows, but you're saying if it never ships to the client, then I don't care.
Yeah, the only thing that matters, right? So that tier 2, and then also like the tier 3, which we didn't get to yet, which is kind of like a fats and salts used sparingly, like component specific ones, and the
interesting. As soon as it's component specific, that's the kind of the rarest token.
Yeah, you want to rattle off the list of the ones that we've encountered. It's like very, very few use cases.
Yeah, it's usually like highly branded things. Like buttons are almost always a given because people want different colors for different states of the button. You have links, you have things like even navigation is in there sometimes. Form fields, because you want all form fields to have kind of the same border color and border radius and all of that stuff.
So when you say that, you mean like, I don't know, a token that's called like form input border or something, and then now I have a token that I can set pink, and then that has a really specific job.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
But the idea is for tier 2 to kind of do the bulk of that work, and then if teams absolutely need to go into the specifics around button or form, then they can do that. buttons and forms are pretty much always a given for these things. But the idea
This
is
is
once
clever,
you come
yeah.
across examples, uh, that are needed, you can kind of add that there, but it should be an important discussion between design and
Yeah,
development.
I could see that, because as soon as you've customized this really specific thing, it has now unicorned itself a little bit. It's now living outside of the regular system of things, which is kind of bad in this world,
And
right?
then you
But,
get 4,000 tokens within
I
a
see.
theme, and then the maintenance of it becomes unwieldy, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, we basically say it's like these things serve a purpose for these heavily branded things. So that's like good example is like, you know, an organization has these different brands that they're supporting. One theme wants to use the brand green as their button background, but then the next theme wants to use like an interactive blue as their thing, not the brand color, right? For whatever reason for the buttons, right? So buttons tend to be this like very kind of obvious, and you know, it's kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. And we've seen basically every team want to handle buttons distinctly.
Yeah, so account for that. Like, those things can be special. Yeah, Dave hates it, but still, I get it.
It's this. I think Dan Mall had a Figma config talk about it. Just like everyone wants to, pardon my French, fuck the button, right? Like they want to just.
Is that an exact Dan
That's-
quote?
Yeah. Seventh Day Adventist Dan Mall really put it really that coarsely. I think like it was no. I think it just was a very like. I think everyone wants to like do this one first. They want to do that, but his argument is like, don't do that first because it's so impossibly complex and you don't realize it from the outside. There's like button outline, button secondary, button tertiary, button hover, split button.
It's redesigning
We've
the
seen it.
homepage.
I'm sure you've made a slide like that probably many times, Brad. That's like, look at how many of these buttons are there. Oh, it's ridiculous, you know. But then you step back and you're like, yeah, but maybe that's fine, you know. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
It is the exception and not the rule.
Yeah.
In the same way
Kinda like
that
the home pages. We've used that thing before too. Like, don't do the homepage first. The homepage is always a little weird unicorn, you know. Like, do it.
Yeah. But in any case, so it's like the design token system. Like after it's all said and done, you have like 90 to 95% of the lion's share of the work being done by this semantic tier 2 level. That's basically saying color background default being set to your body, and then color content default is the text sitting on top of that. So you're able to kind of like create these mappings and make it harder to screw things up. And then you have these like very few handful of exceptions in the form of these tier 3 tokens. But all of that stuff then kind of hangs together and constitutes a theme. And so that means that one theme could just have a handful of color values, and then the next theme could be doing your Dave like yellow 745 whatever, and they could have every color.
So it's reducing the amount of burden. They're essentially, by the time you're at tier 2, it's just overrides, and you can do as many or as few as you want. Or
well, so it's like the tier 2 is again like the star of the show. It's where you're mapping and giving these jobs.
So that there'll probably be a lot of stuff in there.
Tokens,
but then,
right?
yes, you can from there, like kind of override things if you want. Obviously, you want those things to be few and far between, so that if you were to make changes to the system, that there's not a bunch of like hacky overlays on.
A question.
And then you mean go ahead, Dave.
Imagine you work for a large company who has kind of decided to go a different route on these tier 3 tokens. Very similar system, but a different route, just full exploding these tokens. What would you say to them?
Don't
just that's toxic waste.
Easy.
Is that kind of the vibe? Or?
What we've seen, so we were working with a client, and we've kind of helped teams preemptively not get to that point, but then we have worked with clients who have gone that route. And they basically were managing over
4,000 tokens. That's
4,000
why I brought that up
tokens.
earlier. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like, it's quite literally like alert error border radius. Like you would want to override.
Yeah,
the
that's pretty
border radius.
specific.
Yeah,
But like, what if it's already there and you don't use it that much?
Then
Like,
you
is it
get-
still
you
smart to
kill
like?
it. Yeah, you
Then
kill
don't.
it. That's
Okay.
what all of that is born from. It's all of this like just in case we're going to design this, and this happens with design systems in general, is that
Yeah,
people get
right.
into these
But
weird.
if you just don't know, I don't know. Like, what does it? I'm not trying to advocate for it necessarily, but let's say you're a material designer or something, and you're trying to build this system that God knows how many people use it. Maybe putting those in there preemptively is like the move, because then the people have a hook, whether they use it or not. Or is that a foot gun hook? Maybe it is.
I think that it is, even with an open system like that, which is
Oh.
fundamentally like doing, I think, a little bit of a different job. The cool thing about CSS custom properties in general, though, is that like you always can pick at those things. So you could be like, oh, alert dash error, and then you can kind of override the tier 2 value, like in
Mhm.
those should all those are going to be
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're like, you
mildly-
still have a hook. You have your tier 2 hook to override. Just don't
you
make a
have
tier 3
CSS
hook.
selectors
Yeah.
to override and redefine those values.
Right. It
And
doesn't
I think
have
that,
to be
like,
a token.
you want to sort of surface the token system should be a couple hundred tokens at max.
Oh,
And some
good
people
metric.
feel like you can get all the way there with just the tier 2, and like it should be very like reserved and constrictive. That's
Mhm.
fine if we've worked with organizations that desire that. We've also worked with organizations that want a bit more expressiveness and need a bit more. But you're often, whenever after it's all said and done, I think, Ian, for the bulk of the systems we've worked on, we're talking about
3 to 500 tokens.
300 to 500
Yeah.
tops, and that gets you to like, here's a Fortune 500 company that could support their marketing site, their multiple brands, their
Yeah, that's
multiple
extreme. Very
frameworks.
different
Yeah.
things.
So
Yeah.
like 968 is high.
Yeah.
Double high, maybe. Let's
Yeah.
say.
No, there is this weird thing where you can actually create so many tokens, you DDoS your education.
Yeah.
You've basically overwhelmed anyone who opens this like token project or any sort of component, and they're poking around and they're like, what? Why is that different than that? You know? We are getting a lot of expressiveness out of like having so many tokens, and so that's sort of our charter right now. But so
Sure.
I don't feel like, you know, I do think there are things to reconsider, but I think that about all software.
Yeah.
But
I
you know, there is this weird thing. You know, it's names. Like, what are you gonna call this thing? And then like, how's it fall back to like the structure, right? And then the values.
Yep.
And what's weird as a developer, a front end developer, I don't care about either of those. Call it whatever you want. I don't care. Value, I don't care. It's a variable that's supposed to change. I don't care. I literally don't care about either parts of these. But now that it's in code and it's like trying to figure out how this works, and then the third part, which is like tooling, how do we get this out of Figma and into Figma, which you know, that's where it's like, ooh, this problem is very hard. It becomes harder to manage, especially with more things, right?
Yep. Yeah, and that's where it's like that surface area matters, right? So it's like if you're, you know, managing half of these things and you don't need to be touching those things. I think that one of the cool things that we've seen when this has been set up successfully is that the design token system tends to stabilize and you don't really touch it all that much. It's like, here's this thing, here's this brand expressed in design tokens, and that kind of is pretty stable and stabilized pretty quickly. The component system, on the other hand, now you're adding new components all the time. You're adding new variants of those components. You're adding new features. You're fixing things.
Well,
And
that's
that
neat to
tends-
think about, that you could design a whole new component and using your tier 2 stuff and you don't even add or
You don't
remove
touch it.
any. Yeah.
Ever. Like nearly ever. And I think
Yeah.
that's like the big difference. Like, so for like our client that had like the 4,000 tokens, you had introduced a new component. Well, you got to go and create yet more tokens for each and every new component feature, and then you have to go through and backfill all of those things for all of
Yeah.
these every theme
Yeah.
that you have. So it's like it's a game of exponents that you don't want to get into. It's not fun.
We didn't have a dialogue component, and now we're going to make one. So we're making one, and the border around it is 2 pixels solid brand or something. And it has a new thing that nobody's ever done before in a component. It has a : backdrop in CSS. Now I can design the background behind the dialogue. What I'm not going to do is tier 3. I'm not going to make a variable called dialogue background, because that's a tier 3, and we don't do that, or we try not to. So we're going to make we're going to use a tier 2, which is like 50% brand background or something.
Color background transparent is usually what we call it, or semi-transparent or whatever.
Right. The word dialogue is never
Yep.
enters the picture.
And to Dave's point, it is like the naming and arriving at this naming that is clear but also agnostic is very, very difficult to get
imagine.
at. And that's where we've been like, it's literally invented language. All of these names are just totally arbitrary strings because it's just variable names, right? So how do you arrive at a naming architecture and structure that is sane, that isn't too coupled to any individual component, that scales, that gets you what you need? And that's the stuff that, again, we just see team after team after team struggle with. Literally, it's like, we need you to invent Spanish and then speak it fluently.
See, yeah.
You're like, okay.
Yeah. It's why we should probably all like use Chinese ideographs.
This is weird. I wonder how refactoring is going to work. Not that I don't want to dwell on this too long, but it's like we are heavy on custom properties at CodePen, but I don't even think we have a thing that we really call a design system. We have a folder full of components, and we even break them into 2 categories. There's library components, which means that they don't like have queries in them, for example. They're just designy stuff. And then there's one that's called components. Cool distinction, right? We're pretty good at naming things. And those are like okay to query for something. So it could be like a user menu, and it also has the job of querying for the current session user and displaying that information, but that's a distinction. But the library ones have most of the styling in there. So for example, we try to use those, because and then a component can use a library component, but not the other way around kind of thing. But we'll immediately go into like, user -- user drop down background or something, because I like, and that, now looking back, I'm like, that's a mistake. We like jumped to tier 3 like immediately. We have like some color ones that you could consider, like, I don't know, I guess you'd call those tier 1, right? Because they maybe even should have been private, although because we're only one consumer, like, I don't really care that much about the privacy thing. And so the scale of these things does interest me a little bit too. Like, I feels like a lot of what you talk about are like is like preparing for the biggest of the big, kind of like, is there a middle ground that's worth thinking about, or not real, or should you just plan to be big, baby? So we're this mid-tier thing, and we don't even have a tier 2, and I wish we did. If I could refactor it, I would think more heavily about what tier 2 looks like, because I don't know that I get it now in conversation, but I'm not sure I can conceptualize it for my own. I should probably just take the course.
Do you want to talk about how to elegantly do that?
Yeah, there are a couple ways you can do it, and one is by setting those existing custom properties to the new tier 2 system. So you could get those things for free, and it's less kind of work within each component that you're talking about. Or you could dig into each component and kind of add that new token and then fall back to that old token if that doesn't exist. And that allows teams to kind of have their existing token system in place, and if they want to opt into it, they can, but otherwise it kind of falls back to what is currently in place. And that's the power of CSS custom properties right there.
Yeah.
And just so it's like we're mouth coding, like you have -- old token somewhere in your old token is red, and then you have background : var -- new token, comma var -- old token. That's the fallback strategy. Or you're saying you could do -- new token : var -- old token. kind of like set up a default value somewhere?
More like dash dash old token colon that dash dash new token.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Okay.
so you're like leaving the hook. So for instance, like whenever we work with
So it's just
Caterpillar,
old token in the thing.
Caterpillar had, using SAS variables, it's like $cat dash yellow. And we all know what that is. We could envision that in our head, right? And before it was just like, here's the hard coded X value. And like the super lightest, like least invasive surgery was literally introducing the new token system, leaving that SAS variable in place instead of $cat yellow equals hex value. It was $cat yellow is now equal to the design token called.
Beautiful. I love that unholy mix of SAS variables that are actually our CSS custom properties. Hell yeah, why not?
Seriously, why not?
It's a baby step.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and it rolls out static. There is actually like this. This is like my weird insider knowledge working with somebody who works with a browser a company, and that where you just assign the alias variable, there is like a performance penalty for like style recalcing because it has to like walk the tree twice to figure out if any part of that variable chain broke. But those like var old comma or var new comma old is actually way more performant because it's just like a ternary. It's like if new, no, okay, old. Then so but if you pipe it into SAS too, then boom, like that's actually all like static when it comes out the gate. So that's like even the best situation. So
that's and we get to and kind of back to like how we don't want to be publishing those tier 1 tokens. So style dictionary is kind of the tool where you basically define these things in an agnostic format, typically JSON, but you could also do YAML or whatever. And then you can basically have style dictionary convert those into SAS variables, into CSS custom properties.
Oh man, so you're blowing my mind again. So you literally don't ship them. You don't have like a mandate that says like, you don't use these, please. They're not even available to use.
Yeah, well, you could configure a style dictionary to do either way. So you can basically ship tier 1 and then have like the second tier ones mapped to other CSS custom properties.
Yeah, I mean, that would be like,
or you can flatten them out so then they can't have access to them. And that's the way that we would prefer.
That would be safer. Yeah, certainly.
Oh, yeah. And then what's great is that just becomes like a little thing that people pull into their projects.
Yeah, and then you flatten, maybe, I don't know if you flatten all 3, but maybe you ship 2 and 3 and flatten 1 or something.
Yes.
And then that becomes what you're calling a theme, right? And then that just gets shipped.
Off to the races.
And you just swap those out.
Yeah. And so you said style dictionary. I remember this from your talk, and I think I asked you, Ian, about it. Like, do you actually use that thing? And that's the thing that it's like a compilation step for your tokens. So what you're authoring is probably JSON. Do I have that part right? Yeah. And then we're so used to working, and we've talked nothing about or only about websites so far. I've never really built and shipped like a native app or anything. I've done some Electron stuff, but that's just website anyway. But I've never shipped a Swift app or something. Yep. But you can imagine as soon as you have one, like I imagine if CodePen even dabbled and we did it, we would immediately want a system like this. We wouldn't want to be redefining all those colors and all that crap. I would immediately want to do that. And Style Dictionary is a possible piece of technology to use for that, where instead of authoring them as -- custom properties, you author them as JSON. Instead, Style Dictionary is this tool that can crap them out as -- or whatever the hell Swift uses, which I can't talk intelligently about. But now I have one master for both systems. Like, I want to bask in that as like an excellent idea at first before, ... Well, then what about Figma? Like who wins then? Is the JSON the winner? Is Figma the winner? Can they serve each other? I don't even get it, but
I want to jump into Figma, but I'm not sure we have another hour. But yeah, who wins? Who wins, Code or Figma? JSON or Figma?
Dave. Yeah. I don't know, but I'm sure some people very strongly want one or the other.
I think our mindset is to be as away from any specific tool as possible, and JSON has existed for longer than Figma, so
this is old Big Doug Crockford over here trying to get us bought in.
Dude, I think Ian's got a good point though. Like JSON, like Style Dictionary is one of those tools. probably even has a lot less people working on it than Figma does. So which one is like a weaker link in the chain? But I'll tell you, it's Figma. JSON, like Ian is saying, is this ancient format. You could probably tell ChatGPT to write you a JSON to custom property converter and give that a 2-sentence prompt, and it would write you something to do that. Like your escape hatch from JSON is like a lot smoother.
Yeah. When working in design systems and working in this stuff, I mean, same as you all, it's like you see tools come and go, and you try to do things in a way that, has some resilience and has some, that's sturdy and is durable. And you want that stuff to exist beyond the current state of tooling in the year 2025 in June when we're talking about it here. And we just see so many people just, foaming at the mouth, looking at, whether it's the new AI model or the new stuff that came out at Config or the new, whatever conference just dropped this new thing. Everybody, that seems to be the bait for everybody. And a lot of people make a lot of really long-term decisions based on that initial excitement that comes out of those things. And I think that, call us jaded, I guess, but it's like whenever you go through enough things and you see the results of that, right? Sort of working as a consultant, working with so many teams who have bit down on certain solutions for their relative popularity at the time and whatever, and they paint themselves into a corner. That becomes, I think that one of the biggest things that we try to accomplish both in our consulting work as well as like with these courses is it's like, what are the durable, evergreen, just good ideas and solid practices? And you simultaneously need that foundational level knowledge, but then you also, this is the hard part, you need to operationalize that in the current tools that are available to you in that moment. And so you simultaneously need to work with the tooling landscape, whatever the state of Figma is, whatever the state of the JavaScript landscape is, or whatever, and you need to simultaneously transcend it. And that's the hard thing, because I think that like so many people are like, just give me the tool, just give me the answer.
Figma plugin?
What's the Figma plugin?
Yep.
What's the answer? And whenever you come at them with, well, here are these deeper concepts, a lot of people they like hear that and they're like, yeah, but what's the answer? Like they're like not interested in like the sort of like
it's
deeper...
like accessibility. It's like, is it accessible? And you're like, well, it depends. Like, are we talking cognitive? And they're like, no, I don't care anything about that. I care about like,
yes, no.
Like, does it
won't fix?
Yeah. Done? Not done? Please check.
Done.
Please move
Please
card.
Fix.
Won't
P1.
fix.
Like, I'm not interested in your nuance.
So one thing I want to get kind of meta. We have time, right? We're good.
I think so.
Is Figma the problem? Just start really light. There's things we can do in CSS and express in CSS, like padding, right? Like Gmail's cozy, compact middle. You can set up tokens for the middle experience, and then to make something cozy is one class for us that redefines those structural variables, and then shoop, it shrinks up into cozy, right? Like list.cozy. Shoop. Figma doesn't have that. It has variants to some degree, but they don't like go off and redefine variables. Or
you can.
Right? You can?
You can. Yeah. So there's in Figma, there's Figma variables, and there are things called collections, which are like, we'll usually like chunk things out based on those tiers that we were talking about. There will be like a tier 1 collection and then a tier 2 sort of semantic collection. And then within that, there are these like table rows called modes. And that's like where you're able to create multiple collections with multiple modes. So you can have your sort of compact, cozy, comfortable kind of modes and basically map those to different values. And so it's getting better Now that said, it's a feature that was released in the summer of 2023. So it's like 2 years into it, and it is new and incomplete. So for instance, like when they first rolled it out, they didn't have any typography token support. It now has typography token support, but there's other things like we use unitless line height values, for instance. So we'll be like line height 1.3 or whatever. And you can define a percentage-based line height in Figma, but variables doesn't support that. So it's like there's just like certain sort of like shortcomings with it presently. That said, I think that there's like a bigger and more meta sort of thing going on. And what I've seen, and this is a bit my theory on all of this, is that these tools have gotten to this good enough state where designers need to interact with other disciplines in order to make things happen has atrophied. Where it's basically like, oh, we have something that sort of kind of resembles Flexbox or Grid or variables. And so now we don't need to talk to our developers in the way that we used to have to whenever it was like, we're trying to make these responsive sites, but Photoshop was the tool or early Sketch was the tool, and we didn't have those capabilities. So we like needed to actually bother those developers and involve them. And now we're at this like kind of weird uncanny valley of it's kind of sort of similar to how this all works, and let's just relegate our interaction with the other disciplines in the form of a toggle switch, which is
the dev mode.
It's depressing. It is utterly and completely depressing, and I feel like there is this kind of like lack of curiosity and this lack of it. All of the processes, all of everything is kind of reinforcing what I see as this like very, very unhealthy and just this development that is keeping people away from each other. It's very ironic that in the spirit of synchronization and automation and all of this stuff, and we're going from concept to code like faster than ever, but it's like at a human level, I see these worlds getting further and further apart, and that's a topic for one of our forthcoming courses.
No, I
gotta do more courses. That's good.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
I like dev mode it's the start of a bridge, like the start of rather than go find it or what, I put a link in some issue or something. I feel like it's like, hey, this one is actually super ready for dev. So please look at this one. Of all these 700 cards on this page, this is the one I want you to look at. Yeah. That is a situation I'm currently dealing with. I think so. I think it's the start of a bridge between designer and developer, but in using variables. Hey, look, I understand variables. You understand variables. Look, we're all kind of doing the same thing. I think that's the start of a bridge. But yeah, to your point, I don't know that the loop between design and dev and business is tightening. I think it's starting. It can be abused or misused to become more waterfall, right? And that's kind of your.
I think that there's an important dynamic to spell out, which is like, so again, Figma variables, 2 years old. Who's been writing updates? Who has been writing variables for a whole lot longer than 2 years? Developers have been, but because the waterfall process has kind of won, and nearly always that you got a design phase and then the developer handoff and then eventually it goes into engineering. What you have is this total mismatch where you have these people who have been used to historically naming things layer 45, copy 372, copy 42, just horrible naming conventions. And it's not to crap on designers, but like they literally have not had as long of a time to wrestle with structured naming and to care about that stuff. So these are all new muscles that they're developing and learning. And developers are well equipped to be their Sherpas and to guide them and to help them arrive at language that works and that scales and that is durable and resilient, like all that stuff that we were talking about. This is hard earned, and developers have a lot more experience with it. But the tragedy is that they're coming after the designers in the process in most places. So the developers are being handed this just totally subpar system or ill-considered system, when in fact, and we talk about this in the course, and in fact, like, this is how we go about structuring the course, is we literally do it side by side. We're like, this has to be done in a cross-disciplinary way, because
well, that's satisfying, really. You're like proving there. You're not like just, I don't know, sitting around theoretically thinking about what these things should be named or how it should be implemented or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, we're going to actually do what the design calls for. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we see it in these organizations we've worked with where design is calling it this, and then it gets over to development and they're calling it this, and then they're trying to talk to each other. Well, like, what is this actual value? And that's kind of the break in the connection there. So
Yeah.
by doing this course in both Figma and in code, it kind of aligns things nicely, so people can talk to each other a lot easier.
And that's been some of the most satisfying feedback we've gotten from the people who are in the courses. They're like, I've now been given the language that I could use to speak to my developers, or I now better, as a developer, know how to better speak to my designers, because you're like literally putting them side by side. So we're not doing like chapter 4 building a design token system in Figma, and then chapter 5 is building it in code. We're like, no, it's building a token system, and this video shows you how to do it in code. This next video shows you how to do it in Figma. The next one's in code. So we're like literally just trying to bring these worlds closer together, and people have appreciated like actually being able to speak each other's language and to like be encouraged to reach out and involve these other people, rather than just like trying to go it alone and then like hit the dev mode button and hope I don't get yelled at for what I did. So that's what we're trying to do, is like really kind of address these very real human disconnections.
And we've also enabled some of these designers in the course to try this stuff in code, which has been great to kind of guide them on how to do that, so they understand how to work with their developer counterpart.
Yeah, it's been fun to be like, here's NPM. Here's like what this stuff is like we're really we're not trying to infantilize anybody. So like if you're like a seasoned developer, and that's also the beauty of online courses, is like, oh, if you already know how to NPM install and what these things are, then skip over that video or whatever and get into the meat of it. But for a lot of people, including developers, which is crazy, it's like these tools just kind of get like thrust upon us, and we just kind of like have to learn how to use them, but we've never really necessarily been like taught like, here's all this stuff and how it hangs together. So we've heard like a lot from both designers and developers that they're like, oh wow, just like even having like that stuff is great, but then you sort of get into like the more advanced stuff as well.
Well, it's good to hear, because it does kind of, I mean, the skeptic might say like, okay, so there's this whole course on like setting some variables. Can I just set some variables around?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, it's like,
it does kind of, but like, take it from me, you can do it wrong. Not that I'm like swimming in disaster, but I'm like, it makes me want to do it right. Like, there is a right and wrong way to approach this. You can over variable yourself to a point where I think your example of like 800 something, I'm like, I bet people have done much worse.
968, Chris. Let's
nice.
I mean, you can do much worse, to the point where you're not even like really writing CSS anymore. You've built this abstracted system on top of CSS that brings you like no value. It's harder to understand. It's probably less performant. Like, you didn't do yourself a favor. And then I could see somebody walking away and be like, oh, this is bullshit or whatever, like that's not a good move. I tried that once. Like, well, but did you do it right though? And there's
anytime we work with developers who are like, here's all of these like weird like SAS loops, we're always like, oh no, like, yeah, you've invented some weird, Rube Goldberg machine on top of CS.
Buttons are easy. There's like, you look at the code and
I like that, and they represent pretty primitive values. Right. In the end, the value of a token is probably like a size or a color or a font family or something, right? It's not representing a big chunk of stuff. And it's not trying to be like, this replaces CSS. Like, anything you could do in CSS, there's a token for. It's not that either. Yep. That's great.
It's literally, it's like, here is your design language for CodePen or for Microsoft, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're like, you know what, we need to introduce some more razzle dazzle into CodePen, and we want to, get brighter with our color schemes or something like that. It's like you can tweak a couple of values and ship that thing very, very quickly, rather than it being this like big game of whack-a-mole and find and replace, and you got to like crawl through all of these hard-coded values or primitive values, and it becomes a big chore. And especially whenever you're talking about like a larger company that has, in Microsoft's case, almost undoubtedly thousands or tens of thousands or even millions of pieces of software, to be able to be like, we're doing the rebrand and we need to get these new colors out to all of our stuff. You're talking about multiple millions of dollars of effort to roll that out. And when you have a token system in place that's sturdy, you could be like, oh, here's the old legacy design language, and then here's the new one, and literally nothing changes at that sort of semantic layer. You're just sort of doing, mixing and matching to some new values. That is very, very attractive from a business.
Yeah. Cool. Well, gang, I think we're at the hour. We the URL is literally designtokenscourse.com. I appreciate Brad, hell yeah, it is. And Brad does things that probably not everyone should do and nobody does. It's actually a Dave thing too. It's like, you should tell people about what you do. It seems like that could be your book apart book, Dave. Tell people what you do. It's the first damn thing on your website. It's in the nav and stuff now. It's like, I appreciate that, like, clarity. Like, I did a thing. Here it is. I'm not trying to bury it. I'm not trying to be coy about it. I'm not trying to, buy my thing. No, I did a thing. It's right here. It's at the top of my damn website. I like that. And you're on a podcast too. The best one, they say. Best one out there. So thanks, Dave. You got it.
Yeah, thank y'all for coming on. For people who aren't following you and giving you money, how can they do that? We'll start with Ian.
Yeah, you can reach me on Blue Sky or on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Brad?
And I'm bradfrost.com. I'm on Blue Sky, Brad Frost, and LinkedIn these days. Also Mastodon, I feel like, as well. Also getting a little bit more into the YouTube world as well. So I'm on there as well. And but then again, our course is designtokenscourse.com. That's how you could give us money. And again, Shop Talk Show is awesome, is the coupon code to get you 20% off, and bring your designer or developer pal so that you can actually do this together and
good thinking.
Mastery and success.
Use that Q2 fiscal education budget. Tap into it. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for coming on. This has been therapy for me and my 968 friends. And thank you, dear listener, for downloading this in your podcast of choice. Be sure to start it up. That's how people find out about the show. Follow us on Mastodon or Blue Sky, one of the good ones. And then join us in the Discord, patreon.com/shoptalkshow. Chris, you have anything else you'd like to say?
-- shop talk website :quote http://shoptalkshow.com / semicolon.